to another thought-provoking episode of the Merging Life and Money Show. The live show and podcast are dedicated to helping professional women achieve financial wellness by merging the emotional and practical sides of money. I am your host, Marie-Jo Caesar, and I am thrilled to bring you a conversation that I am certain will resonate with many of you. How long should parents support their adult children? Today's discussion will focus on the intersection of family love, personal responsibility, and financial planning. It is a question that most families grapple with at some point, and it is a conversation that needs careful handling given the emotional and financial stakes involved. So to help us with this, sometimes I would say touchy subject, we are privileged to have certified financial planner and partner at Archer Investment Management, Emily Rassam. Welcome, Emily. Emily will provide us with an in-depth perspective on this somewhat sensitive topic. Emily is recognized not only for her technical skills, but also for her ability to navigate the emotional landscape of finance with empathy and clarity. So in this conversation, she will share insights into finding a balance between providing financial support to adult children and encourage their independence. Emily will also present key factors and effective strategies to empower families when initiating and navigating difficult conversations. So sit back, grab a cup of your favorite beverage, I have mine, and join us as we explore this very important topic that we don't want to talk about with our esteemed guest, Emily Rassam. So if you are tuning in from iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or any other major podcast platform, thank you for being here today. I am delighted to have you. So without further ado, let's dive into the heart of the matter. We will be focusing on 3 how-tos, I call them. And they are how supporting adult children requires a comprehensive financial plan, how healthy boundaries and communication are key for successful support, and how incorporating money lessons into the support provided prevents dependency and real expectations. So here you have it. We are in for a treat. So, Emily, my first question to you is, can you explain the importance of a comprehensive financial plan when supporting adult children?
Yeah, absolutely. And regardless of the scenario, I think everybody really should be looking at their finances in a longer term view. And rather than focusing on this month or next month, it's really understanding how everything impacts really the next few decades for you. And a financial plan will do that. It's important for anybody to do that process, but especially for somebody who might have the need to support adult children for a period of time, it's really important for that person to really understand their own finances very well. And so the process of building that comprehensive financial plan is looking at current cash flows, so money coming in, money going out, and projecting everything over a long period of time to make sure that all of the future goals, long-term goals, are going to be met. So we want to make sure with all of our clients that they're going to be able to retire when they want to, have the lifestyle that they desire, have some of those intermediate goals, potentially home improvements and vacations and car purchases and all the things in between. We don't want to compromise that person's potential financial plan. So it's really good to know, really at a baseline, if what you're doing right now from a saving and spending perspective is leading you to be able to achieve all of the goals that you want to hit for yourself and for your family, before deciding how much is really there and available to then support adult children or really do anything else. So really start with that.
You read my mind, because my next question to you is, how can parents integrate their children's financial support needs into their overall financial plan without jeopardizing their own financial security? And I think that you covered quite a little bit of that by explaining what they should really take into consideration, and the big R word, retirement. Because I remember Susie Orman saying that your kids will get a chance at a scholarship for their studies. However, you will not get a scholarship for retirement. So this really stuck with me. As a result, it's always very important that you take care of yourself first. As they show you in the plane, put your mask on first and then help somebody else. So that's quite telling. So you preempted the answers to those questions. So my next question to you will be, what steps should parents take to ensure that they maintain financial balance while supporting their adult children?
So when they build that comprehensive plan, what we then do is to plug in some of those what if scenarios. So what if I supported my children in a certain way towards college or their first house or for their wedding, or if it's just that monthly maintenance support? We want to know, how does that look? And if you choose to do that, what might that take away? So either you might have the surplus to do that, and that's fine. But we also want to know, potentially, by choosing to do this, so by choosing to fully support college or pay for this down payment on the house or the wedding or this maintenance, how does that impact or take away from the other potential goals? How does that change that retirement plan scenario and your ability to do everything else along the way? So I think sometimes just laying that all out, and then when we build that in a financial plan, there are different buttons and levers that we can hit that says, okay, yes, we do support or we don't, or we support maybe a little bit less than maybe what we were maybe thinking we might do. How does that look? And so we can run a plan side by side and see, how does the plan look with that support and how does it look without it? I really do feel that sometimes the numbers speak for themselves. So it's really hard because sometimes people just want that quick answer from me of, should I do this or can I do this?
They expect you to have the answer. They expect you to have the answer.
Yeah. And it depends, right? Because
I know.
only they know what they're willing to sacrifice with their own goals in order to make that happen. And it's just basically, and it's funny because I have a toddler. I've been trained to speak to him in the same way. By choosing this, you're also choosing this. And so by choosing not put your shoes on, you're choosing to not go outside.
Yeah.
And
there's always a reaction to an action, right?
Yeah. So it's showing that scenario. And very often clients then are able to then see long term what that impact looks like. And I think that's really the important part, because it's not just looking at next month, what's our inflow and outflow and how much surplus might we have. It's, how does this impact me in a long kind of range plan?
Always. Whilst it's appeared to be simple, it's not always the case, because in my experience, I found that people see financial plan, or whatever you want to call it, budget, as a constraint rather than a tool, allowing them and giving them carte blanche to spend money, the money that they have, in a way that they would like to do it, taking into consideration, particularly the long-term view. So I'm totally in agreement with you on that when it comes to having financial plan. And it's all about being prepared and being proactive and telling your money where to go, but then finding out where it went. So that's it. So thank you so much for that, Emily. So let's talk about boundaries and communication. So could you provide us with some insight into the role that they play in this process?
Yeah, great question. And the personality dynamics in each family are different, and the backgrounds are a little bit different too. But what I have found is that for a lot of folks that do choose to support their adult children, they have open communication and conversation around it. So I think the most detrimental thing is to just blindly support for an indefinite amount of time without a discussion around it. And so a lot of clients that do provide support will sit down with their children and say, let's look at your budget. let's look at your inflows and outflows. So we want to have first the parents have an understanding of their own situation, but also have an understanding of the child's situation so that they know how much should I support based on this child's first job. Maybe it's in a more expensive city. And after 6 months or 1 year or 3 years, the growth trajectory on that job might be in a way that will allow that child to support themselves. And so I think it's very important for the adult children to be taught about budgeting and understanding monthly surpluses and deficits and making smart decisions about each of the areas of their budget. And then understanding from their parents that, they're going to support to the level of maybe just closing that gap so that they're not at a deficit for a period of time while they're getting ramped up. But there's an expectation that we're supporting you because we know that you have a path that you are on. And let's talk openly about when that occurs. So as you get raises and as you move forward, as you have different opportunities within your career set, that support is then slowly pulled back because they're having regular communication about the budget and open dialogue about what's potentially needed.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I hear you, and we are on the same page. We don't have any issues talking about money. However, this is not the case for the majority of parents. Based on your experience, how can parents initiate this conversation about financial support and boundaries with their adult children? And I have this say here because my kids are adults, right? And I recall when they went away to college, and I lived in Bermuda then, so they had to go away to school. And I told them, okay, guys, you are living as a student. You will be coming back here as a guest. So don't expect to be hanging around for too long after that. However, the whole mommy help and all this get into the weird, and it doesn't always work like this. And as a parent, it's not always that simple. We have these emotions and we want to help our kids. We want our kids to be better than who we are now, etc. So again, how can parents initiate this conversation without that emotional stress attached to it?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways to attack this. So if the parent is not comfortable initiating that conversation or unsure of really how to approach that conversation, I do have clients that loop me in. Right after this, I'm going to be speaking with one of my clients' 21-year-old daughters just about the financial foundations and setting a budget and enrolling in her benefits because she's going to be graduating school and starting with her first job. And they felt that hearing it from somebody else might land with her a little bit differently. So potentially involving that third party in that conversation can be helpful. I also have had clients who have had their children basically identify what the problem is and propose the solution. And so the child is basically saying, this is my scenario as I understand it. And the child has to come up with what their budget is, what that deficit is, what the need might be, and for how long, and then create a proposal to go to their parents. So in that situation, it's more of a lesson. And the word I always think of it is this process, regardless of who's working together on that, is it needs to be collaboration. So it needs to be a collaborative conversation. Yeah. And I think that when you involve the child in coming up with a solution, it helps them to understand what the issue is altogether. And so I also don't think that we necessarily need to, at the beginning, set the exact end date to say, okay, you're 26, you're going to come off our health insurance and car insurance and all of that, because we don't know where they're going to be. I think that it works really well if it's our expectation is that we're going to have these conversations quarterly or twice a year. You're going to come to us with the budget and the scenario, and we're going to talk through it and really determine what's needed for this next period of time and take it chunk by chunk.
Totally. And I agree, because it's no ideal world anywhere around that, because the targets seem to be moving. So what strategies can parents use to maintain open and effective communication with their adult kids about finances?
Yeah, so part of that can be if the child's comfortable with open books, it's basically saying that the child will commit to utilizing a certain app or spreadsheet or system, track their expenses, and really have good financial housekeeping. I don't recommend it's totally open. I don't think the parents need to see what bar this kid went to on Saturday or anything like that. But I think just the general categories make sense to potentially see at periods of time and to potentially look at that. So utilizing some of those tools. I also had some clients send their kids through different courses, such as, the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University, or one of those types of programs, and saying, our support is really contingent on you understanding your own personal finances and developing some really good habits around that. So either you're going to read this book or go through this course or speak to our advisor and really work through an educational element so that you have the tools necessary really to move forward on your own when you're ready.
Okay, that's great. And there are tools available. And the parents also have to be knowledgeable because you cannot leave it to the kid. And now there are so many apps and programs out here that you could potentially use. Can you share some example where establishing clear boundaries have resulted in what I would say a more successful financial relationship between parents and their adult kids?
Yeah, so one example that I can think of is a couple of years ago, I had a client whose child is graduating in, I think, May of 2020. And so really graduating college into kind of that COVID environment. And so they decided to have a conversation and say, listen, we understand that a lot of companies have frozen their hiring or they're working through some hiring changes. And, we want to give you some time to find the right job and not jump into one where either one, you're going to have to work some kind of frontlines job and expose yourself potentially to COVID. At that point, that was important to them. And also to take a little bit of time to land into their career field, their intended career field based on their degree. And so they basically decided that there was a level of support that they were going to provide for that child it was May graduation through December. And they said in January, we're going to reassess and have a conversation about how that next 6 months is going to go. And then the 6 months after that. As of right now, I just spoke to this family about 3 weeks ago, and their child's fully independent. They're saving in their 401k. They're building up a Roth IRA. They're doing a lot of great things. They had decided ahead of time. They said, we understand the scenario, and this is really why we want to support you and what our intended goal is for you. Over this period of time, I think it took probably a year and a half to really get that child fully off of their payroll. But now they're in a very successful scenario and they were hired into the right field.
So basically what I'm hearing is it is very important to establish clear expectations regarding the duration and extent of financial support. Because clearly, if you don't do that, you may be in for some surprises. So moving on to the topic of financial education, a topic I would say very near and dear to my heart. How can parents use financial support as a teaching opportunity for their adult children?
Yeah, and I think that the teaching is really in that budget creation. I know I keep bringing it back to the budget, but I think that that's a topic that I cover with everybody, regardless of their age or life stage, is really getting a good understanding of inflows and outflows, and then making decisions with what to do with the surplus or planning ahead for what's going to happen with the deficit. Part of that is teaching some of that forecasting. For a lot of people, budgeting is really just tracking what's already happened and saying, these are the past few months and this is what I spent. But to me, it's really more of a spending plan and coming up with, what am I expecting to happen next month and the month after that? What are the inflows and outflows? So when the part of the inflow is probably income, right? So if a child's receiving support, they might have some kind of part-time income, or maybe they're not fully employed yet. But part of that inflow is that support that's coming in from their parent. We just treat that as an income inflow to build up that projection. So I think a lot of it is just having them practice those different types of qualities. The other types of lessons that I think are really important to learn, I love talking to my clients' children about time value of money and compounding interest and kind of growing that. A few weeks ago, I had an evening appointment where I talked to a 13-year-old and 15-year-old children of my clients. And they projected me up on their big TV in their living room, and the four of them sat on the couch. And I pulled up a calculator and said, if you start saving and investing at current ages, and you've got 50 years to go versus 40 years to save, 30 years to save, here's the difference. And it's so powerful. So I think that's a lesson. And part of the adult support that I love to see my clients have are different matching elements into a Roth IRA, for example, or 401k, where, yes, if you are saving in some of these vehicles and you're investing and you are living with understanding how investments move and compound and grow, I think that's also a great lesson. So I love to see that part of some of the support that parents provide is instilling some of that lesson of growing that wealth over a long period of time. And the final thing is I'm a big fan of bucketing money for different purposes. So I like to think of it like Marie Kondo, organizing your sock drawer or pantry. I like to organize money in that way as well. So I think that's another thing, another lesson that's important for younger people to learn is to have that emergency fund, but also money for car repairs or building towards the next car, money for maybe buying that house or home improvements, and each of those different types of buckets. And so I think that in a successful kind of education lesson, it's really getting a good understanding of inflows and outflows and projecting that, making some decisions about the surplus and deficit expected, bucketing some of that money, and then growing and compounding some of that as well. And so if those things are taught, I think that's a very successful education.
In fact, my next question was going to be, what are some key financial lessons that parents should impart to their children during this support period? And again, it is important because they are the basics of personal finance. Also, a lot of it depends on where you are in the cycle. And it is very important for parents to draw the line somewhere. And so if you were to come up with 3 key financial lessons, what would it be for any parent?
Yeah. Aside from what I've just mentioned, I think one of those is communication. When those adult children then become partnered up, I think that it's so important for when a child is either working with their parents on the financial situation to be able to communicate about money. And then when they are partnered up, living with somebody, potentially then married, having that open communication and goal setting. So my husband and I sit down the last Sunday of every month and we just talk about what happened last month, what's going on next month, how are our buckets of money doing, how does the overall projection look? And it's fun. We sit down usually with a bottle of wine or dessert and we just talk. We talk about what our goals are, how we're feeling about money, if we feel stressed about anything, what we would do with any kind of surplus that comes in. So I think communication leads to that pre-planning that I think is important to do, because if an adult child then receives a tax refund or a bonus and they don't have a plan for that ahead of time, there's a lesson in pre-planning and communicating about windfalls and what to do and what the priorities are, what the goals are, and ultimately what will make them happy with utilizing their money over time. So part of budgeting, I don't think that it's limiting. I don't like to tell people I'm going to put you on a budget. I think that just allows you to be more intentional with your money so that you can say, I'm choosing to do this with my money. I'm telling it where to go because these are the experiences I want to have and the things I want to do. And if I don't pre-plan that, I might just blow it on ordering takeout a bunch of times in the week and not necessarily taking a trip or doing the types of things that I want to do.
Okay, so I heard communication, I heard know your goals, and I heard be intentional with your money. Great. So moving right along, can you provide some advice on how parents can, what I'm trying to say here, how parents can set realistic expectations, because it's just thin line between being dependent and prepare yourself to be independent, if you will. What can you tell parents about that?
Yeah. So some of the things that the parent would need to then communicate are, this is our ability. And we can't compromise our ability to retire on time or do things that we need to do if they're paying down debt or saving towards something. They need to be able to say, and it's not that you don't want to necessarily bring the child into your finances and really explain or over explain what's going on. There's actually issues with that as well. But just being able to firmly say, this is really all we can help you with. And this is really how long we're able to do that for us to have our own financial peace of mind and be able to do what we need to do. So I think that's why parents build the plan themselves. They create that open communication, but they're also communicating back to the child, this is really what we're able to do. So I think that's really important to be clear on what those numbers are ahead and lay that out.
Yeah, that's so critical because you have your toddler, you have to be able to communicate certain things that kid can understand and stay with them. That's for a lifetime. So you don't sit with them at 16 just to say, okay, college years are coming up. That's how we're going to do that. And then when you come back, so it's a forever learning process, if you will. So tell me, based on your experience, how can parents teach their children about the value of sacrifice and living within their means? Because that's what it boils down to, right? Especially when they are the one providing the financial support.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I had a meeting recently where a woman said that she was really grateful for her time period when she was in residency and not making much money yet. And she really learned the value of the dollar. And she only went out to eat once a month, and her rent was $700 a month. And she really sacrificed during that time. And so now that she's earning more money, she's now a doctor and earns more. She said that there's a lot of value in having gone through that, knowing that if she ever needs to in the future, she can scale back. So that gives her that comfort level to know, I know how to make ramen noodles, and I know how to get by on a budget. And I know how to cut back on how often I'm going out and what I buy. And so has a very healthy relationship with money because she's gone through that. So I do think it is important for people to have to figure it out and make some sacrifices. And so that's why by looking at the budget and figuring out what support is needed, you don't want to over support. And so that's why looking at the budget makes sense, because if a child's used to all this surplus, it's also unrealistic if that is going to never match what they're actually going to be earning later. So I know somebody who gives each of their children, 5 children, $10,000 a month. And their kids are all in their 20s. And they can't really afford it. They've got a good income, but they also really aren't on track for their own goals. They just feel this parental need to support their children. And in my mind, I'm thinking there's no way that 5 different individuals all need $10,000 a month. That's insane. You're also teaching them that they need to live on that amount of money. So are they on track? They're all in their 20s. So are they on track to be in a career set where they're going to be able to earn that?
That's correct. Yeah.
So I also think that you're also building them up to a lot of financial issues in the future from money status perspective, feeling like now they can afford to go buy whatever they want, designer clothes, nice car, and they're going to have to take a big step back. So I think it's really important to understand what the earning potential is going to be. And I think a really good college consultant can be a really good starting point before the kids even go to school, because a college consultant typically will be able to talk about how do we get through school with lower loans, get into the right school, position yourself well, scholarships. But also they tend to help them calculate how long do you need to work for free in order to pay back your loans? Are you paying a lot of money for a degree where you're not going to earn a lot? And are you going to have to work for 7, 8, 10 years before you've broken even on that investment in your education? So I think some of that communication can start. That's a really big decision that then sometimes creates a lot of this then adult need trajectory. I fully support people hiring a college consultant to really begin some of this conversation and really prevent some of the big issues that people come out of school with at 22 with big loans and lower job prospects.
Correct. And to which is on when it comes to that, they certainly need to know and understand how money is earned. And once you have it, how to use it. Very quickly, what are some common mistakes based on your trajectory that parents make when financially supporting their adult children, and how can they be avoided?
Yeah, I'll never forget somebody I know that he was working still at 71 years old and supporting two children who were in their, and he wanted to be able to retire, but just had continued supporting his kids when they were in their 20s and 30s, now 40s. And there's just no end in sight. And so he was just in despair about how long he let all of this go, and then feeling like he couldn't retire. And it was clear to me that the kids probably had no idea that he's choosing to work and has to work to continue supporting them, and that he's not financially on track for his own goals because of that. And to me, I only came into the scenario after these couple decades of support that have gone on way too long. And that's why I do think that I don't want to set any kind of time limit, because every situation is so unique. But I do really feel that by the time the kid is probably 25, 26, 27, that support really probably should be coming down, unless they're in residency and earning almost nothing, but there's going to be some income. And so some of those factors certainly play a role. But I think that really getting them through those early and into the mid-20s is usually appropriate. And if your 40-something-year-old kids still need your support, you still have to work at 71, now it's a much tougher conversation that needs to happen.
I guess it would be based on what they're studying, how long they're going to be studying for, and all of that. But as you said in your topic about boundaries, you got to establish those boundaries. And they don't need to be rigid, but certainly conversation must be had on a regular basis to make sure that then you don't have someone like your client here, 71, working basically to support their kids. It comes a point where, okay, I'm working to enjoy life after I did whatever I had to do. That's where it's important to have that conversation. So before we wrap up, could you share your top 3 pieces of advice for parents who are currently supporting or planning to support their adult kids financially?
Yeah, absolutely. So start as early as possible. And so, as I mentioned before, starting with that college consultant now, I mentioned I talked to my clients' children that were 13 and 15. It's never too early to start the conversation. So my top tip is, if you're listening and your kids aren't quite adult children yet, start that conversation now. The second one is get your own house in order. Get your finances in order so that you are not blindly supporting without understanding the impact on your own finances. Have that projection done of your own finances and make those decisions that way. And then the third one is, don't be afraid to bring in a third party to help support that conversation. So bringing it to your current advisor or a new advisor to say, can you lay out this scenario for all of us? Because we can't seem to have good conversation or communication. We feel that we need to collaborate with a professional who can then help us through this conversation as well.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. I could tell you that. That is excellent. And it is difficult, okay? Talking about money is not something that comes naturally, unfortunately. And the mere idea of thinking of bringing a third party could be a bone of contention with a lot of parents, okay? And I think it's a generational issue as well. I guess Gen Xers and millennial parents are probably more open to the conversation. But I'm looking at my generation. I'm a boomer. And I could tell you, excuse me, no, we're not bringing anybody. We need to sort that out ourselves. So again, it's cultural and it's generational. So this was really good info. This brings us to the end of another enlightening episode of the Merging Life and Money show. So today's conversation has underscored 3, in my view, critical aspects of supporting adult children financially. First, we've learned about the paramount importance of having a comprehensive financial plan. This acts as a roadmap, I would say, enabling us to understand all our goals and how supporting adult children fits into the broader financial picture. Second, Emily really highlighted the importance of boundaries and communication, because understanding your child's situation allows you to gauge how much support is needed and for how long. And it helps to strike a balance making sure that support does not become a crutch, but rather a stepping stone toward their financial independence. And lastly, we dove into the necessity of creating money lessons around the support provided. So we learned that there is potential harm in offering excessive support without education, like the 71-year-old person still working just to keep their kids okay. And that is vital to set realistic expectations and teach our children about the value of sacrifice and living within their means, okay? We hope that this conversation has been as valuable for you as it has been for me. Can't believe supporting 5 kids at 10 grand a month. That's crazy. These insights from Emily can truly change how we approach the financial dynamics within our families. So keep talking about money. So, Emily, I'm sure many of our listeners are eager to learn more from you and possibly engage your services. So could you kindly share the best way for our audience to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. So I believe my LinkedIn bio information will be shared through the show. I share tips almost every single day, from tax planning to estate planning to really money mindset and emotional aspects about money. So if you want to get a better understanding of kind of how I work with clients and things that I talk about, that's a great place to start. If you'd like to talk to me further, certainly email is a great way to reach me. And I'm at Emily at
And I have Emily's information streaming at the bottom of the screen. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So email is great place to start. And really, it's just an introductory conversation. Usually I talk to you for 10 or 15 minutes and figure out what you need, what you're looking for, if we're a fit to work together, and really no pressure, no stress conversation.
Yes, great. And as my listeners know, I like to end my show with a quote. And today I chose a quote from an unknown author, and it resonated with me. And it reads, "Investing in your child's education does not mean solving their problems for them. It means giving them the tools to solve their own problems." Before signing off, we have a few calls to action for you. This was an interesting conversation, so we got to leverage it. So make sure to share this episode with some family members who might be grappling with the question of how long parents should support their adult children. And if you have any questions or thoughts from today's episode, do not hesitate to reach out to us. Reach out to Emily, reach out to me, and you could send us a message via our website, our social media channels. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe to the Merging Life and Money Show so you don't miss out on future episodes where I continue to explore the fascinating intersection of life and finance. So thank you, Emily, once again. And thank you, listeners and followers, for tuning in as we look forward to bringing you more insightful conversations covering a wide range of financial wellness topics in our upcoming episodes. So I will see you next week, Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm just making sure everybody catch me on 8 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. Central Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and 11 p.m. Atlantic Time. I always like to take care of my Bermuda peeps over there. And of course, my Australian friends, this will be noon Friday for you guys. Thank you for being here today on the Merging Life and Money Show. And to stay connected, be sure to follow me and make sure to follow Emily as well on social media and subscribe to our podcast. And let's continue our journey to financial wellness and success. I am your host, Marie-Jo Caesar. I will be back again next week. Until then, continue merging life and money. Bye for now.